CityCast from Explocity.
This is Selma Carvalho reading from my novel, Sisterhood of Swans, published by Speaking Tiger. This is from chapter 6. The chapter is titled Guilt and the Light Traveler. Black-winged bird on birch tree, a clumsy cloud lurches for the sky. The dead of winter arrives in its coat of white. Battalions of fog banks rise in the night. The radiators hum songs of a summer revival. I feel the cold on my face. The night is cruel and callous, settling in the corners of my room. I am eyeless in this economy of light, listening to the words asshole and fuck looping from nearby neighborhood windows. Somewhere is a Beatles song being played. I've left several messages for Sanjay, but have not heard back from him in a week. It's late Friday evening when he calls and asks me to meet him at his house. We've met often at the Six Bells rent by hour rooms, and the landlady, sensing continued custom, always gives us the same room. But only once at his house, the first time. The knot tightens. I leave my flat under cover of darkness. I see a sad-eyed dog cross the road near the Red Squirrels Drive Slowly signpost. He looks at me, bushy-tailed and sympathetic. Dogs understand. They know what it is to be lonely for their owners. The number 222 bus is lit from within, a moving beacon of fluorescent hope traveling through Horton. Are you going past Belcoast Road? I asked the driver. Near enough, miss. Will you let me know when we're close? Will do, miss. Thank you, driver. The bus is empty except for a young West Indian lad in the front seat with his headphones on, and Jessie at the back seat sprawled its full length with her feet propped up against the windows, the fading blonde streaks in her hair making her head look like a wicker basket. She's talking loudly into her mobile. Bloody bastard didn't pay again this month. Mine ones need shoes for school. Mine ones go without food. Does he care? I hear her say. I wonder if Jessie is married or seeing someone, and if that bloody bastard is the someone. She glares at me then and juts her skin out in recognition. I smile at her. She puts her phone in her pocket and gives me the middle finger. I wonder what I've done to be despised by Jessie. I wonder if Jessie, with her red varnished nails, will rip my skin out the next time I'm lying naked in the dirty cubicle at the Bollywood-style salon. Will she exercise her wanton power when she's standing poised over me, hot wax knife in hand, saying, "Spread leg, please"? I turn my head and gaze into the bottomless black of the night, trying to make out street names. A few minutes later, I get off the bus and walk to Belcoast Road. A cat darts into the holly hedgerow when a car pulls out of a driveway. There are no street lamps here. The night is silent and solemn with promise. In the distance, I can hear the hoarse cry of foxes, and I feel instinctively a clamp of fear for all the defenseless creatures who hide in the darkness. I arrive at house number 9, the house where I must secret a space for myself. Sanjay opens the door, wearing white kurta pajamas. He looks older than he does in corduroys. His hair, left untended, is graying at the edges, and his eyes are more burdened than usual. Guilt is not suited to the light traveler. It weighs heavy.
Even a mildly curious glance at any of the millions of communities of migrant people the world over will yield something interesting. The Goans of India are one such. They are a fun and likeable lot, as most of us know. We know them by their state, Goa, the dream vacation destination for many, and their seeming love of life, which is synonymous with the state of bliss. They even have a word for that. And don't get me started on their feni. I fondly remember commencing my descent into bottles of Goa's finest, but for some reason I can never remember what happened afterwards. Those were my happy drinking days. I haven't touched a drop to drink for over 20 years now, as I stew in abstemious contemplation of my navel. Goans have been an adventurous people, seafaring and peripatetic, while they migrated to every continent mainly in search of better livelihoods. All tales of migrant people, as I said, always have some surprises. Well, a Goan becoming an accountant in Muscat, Oman might not be much of a story, but how a musician, a Mr. D'Souza, became the band leader of the Sultan's band in Zanzibar is a matter of lasting curiosity. My guest today is she who tells such tales. Selma Carvalho is a Goan who grew up in Dubai and now lives in London. By all evidence, not only is she the most visible chronicler of the Goan diaspora, but also its most compelling. Selma's record of this history is as entertaining as it is scholarly. I started by researching her for this podcast, but very quickly disappeared into the maw of her prose and to its, I use her rather interesting word, centripetal location. After writing much non-fiction, Selma's debut novel, Sisterhood of Swans, is available everywhere. And now, speaking to me from her home in London, this witty and incisive scholar, Selma Carvalho, welcome to the Literary City.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One of my favorite questions and a lasting mystery to me is, why do we write? Now, you answered that in an essay you wrote for this literary magazine called, let me see if I can pronounce it correctly, Zouave Rock?
Zouave Rock, actually. Zouave Rock.
Zouave with a Z.
Yeah, Zouave Rock.
Zouave Rock Literary Journal. And your essay was titled Creolus and Poskim?
That's right.
Now, I assume that Creolus is Creole, right?
Yes.
And what's Poskim?
Yeah, from Poskim.
Poskim.
We don't know the actual etymology of that word, but it translates to adopted child.
The opening paragraph of that essay is why we write. So, Selma, why do you write?
You know, I can't actually remember a time when I've not written as such. And if you ask my mother, she'll tell you, even as a child, I always said I wanted to be a writer. But when you come from a middle-class Indian family, that's not an aspiration that's supported in any way. For some of us, I think it's just the way that we engage with the world. We feel compelled to think about the world and our place in it, either at a personal level or at a larger political level.
It is a bit of a vanity thing too, isn't it? I mean, as writers, when we grow up, at some point in time, we realize that we are more articulate than our milieu.
Well, when I was very young, a man said to my mother, she's got a tremendous vocabulary. And my mother told me that. And that always stuck at the back of my mind. But what you have to be able to do is be elastic with your language. That's the only way the prose is generated, is that plasticity. In tandem with that, you've got to have a certain depth of understanding.
You have both of those things quite clearly.
Thank you. I wonder about that, but thank you.
Now, you were quoted as saying that the short story is the gateway to literary writing. What's literary writing?
Literary writing, as opposed to, say, commercial and plot-driven writing, has to have an interiority. The character has to have an interior life, which is very rich and contemplative. That is the only difference between literary writing and commercial writing. Genres are fluid.
So what's wrong with I'll know it when I see it?
Yes, it's just like pornography, isn't it?
Oops, busted.
You can't.
I was trying to be polite.
You can't define it, but you know it when you see it, or when you read it, rather.
Some people feel that we're losing the script when it comes to literary writing. What's your view?
It's funny that you should mention this because, the International Booker List has just come out 2 or 3 days ago. And there was a kind of a comment made that for the first time, they've dipped into what could easily be classed as commercial writing.
You have written so many historical accounts of the Goan diaspora. Now, none of your pieces are steeped in dense pedagogy. You write in a very, very interesting way. That's literary in my view.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I think that's really a very perceptive point to make, because I came to writing from nonfiction. And so I concentrated on nonfiction for a good 10 years of my life, and during which time I wrote those 3 books that document the Goan presence in East Africa. And also I headed the 3-year project, which was funded by the heritage sector in London, and is now deposited with the British Library. The feedback always is that I make history enjoyable. So typically Goan academics write, they're very dense in their writing, and it's very, very difficult to trawl through it. And I don't think anyone picks up a book on Goan history and actually enjoys it or reads it with any interest.
Nonfiction doesn't have to be boring. For example, that piece that you wrote about that Goan band leader in Zanzibar.
Yes.
The opening lines of that piece were compelling, almost Hemingway-esque. Simple declarative sentences. Didn't keep me from getting from one sentence to the next. Takes skill.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I hate to invoke my mother-in-law in this, but she did say one day that, anyone can write. And and my response to that was, sure, anyone can write, but who's reading this?
Not everyone will read.
So you've got to have a relationship with your readers. You can't be overly clever. This is me. I'm so smart, and I can make a simple sentence so complex that you'll never want to read it.
To our listeners, there are links to Selma's writing in the podcast description. Back to you, Selma. You said that you grew up in the Arabian Gulf Goan milieu. Where exactly did you grow up?
I grew up in Dubai.
And what is the Goan milieu, and why does it exist?
I didn't have friends outside of that sort of Goan community. And
why not?
We just didn't, because Goans, particularly maybe in the diaspora, but also if you're a 1970s, 1980s, 1990s Goan, bear in mind that we were liberated in 1961.
Okay.
So we're a fairly young state of India. Mm-hmm. And there is still that insularity that resides within us. So yes, that's what I mean when I write I grew up in this Goan milieu. Yeah.
Okay.
It was only as an adult that I discovered the diversity that Dubai had to offer.
I have often come across descriptions of the predilection that many Goans appear to have between their Indian and Portuguese identity.
It is.
And what happens, and is it going to remain that way?
See, life takes over. I mean, that is the fundamental truth about ourselves, is that life takes over. So for my generation, it's a thing. When I say a Goan milieu, that Indo-Portuguese culturalization is part of that milieu. But you speak to generations that have come after me, they grow up in very Indian milieu, and they have no sort of split loyalties or, cultural dissonance of any sort. So life takes over. It's linear.
In Sisterhood of Swans, which I will get to in substance a little later, you have a scene of this couple sitting in a pub while a football match is going on, feeling increasingly alienated from the action. That part of your book got my attention because, connected in spirit with your story, I have often wondered why young Bangalore men, maybe the rest of India too, swear loyalty to some English Premier football club. I don't get it, and they're driven to tears when their team loses. For a while, I didn't think much of it. I had other things to do. Right. And then I met this couple.
Right.
They saved up money and traveled to England to support their club Arsenal. And then they go to this football match, and they treat it as a curiosity over there.
Oh my God, that is so true. Because you just won't see a person of color at a football match in London. You just won't.
The wife told me the story, the husband wouldn't. But anyway, there they were, and in the Arsenal football match, wearing the scarves and colours and cheering and carrying on. And then an older British gentleman leaned kindly into them and asked, "What are you doing here?"
I can so believe that. But
Anyway, now they support the Kolkata Knight Riders cricket.
much safer, I'm sure. I'm so glad you mentioned that particular scene in the book. And there are just two aspects to it. First of all, there's a tribalism, and we're tribally loyal to something. So at a football game in England, you will see that sort of tribalism at its very rawest moments.
And now to an article that you wrote in the Herald.
You've read a lot of my articles, I see.
Have Google will travel.
You've read far more than most people have.
Thank you. I try. You wrote, "India is not a land of many histories. It's a land of shared history."
Well, I mean, the thing is, India is a land of disparate histories in the sense that, it's a land that had many feudal loyalties. And it was in fact the British that kind of, to fit in with the administrative apparatus, put India together. But within that, we're now living in a moment of shared history. So all those disparate threads have to come together, and we have to own them as one. So we can't go about saying, well, those were the Mughals, those were the Portuguese, those were the British colonizing us. All of that is a shared history now. And we have to own it as our historical past, as one nation.
Changing road names is not really going to fix it, is it?
No, nor of cities. And in fact, because in fact, in the opening line, in the opening chapter of mine, there's a line that says names of people and rivers have meaning when everything else changes course.
Talking about your articles, there was this other article that you wrote called The American Guest.
Yeah.
Now, there's a thread running through that.
I think that speaks to the same thing we're talking about right now.
In that piece, you speak of an emotion that overcomes you and makes you sweat, but eventually blurs and disappears.
Yeah.
Is blurs and disappears some sort of analogy for permanence?
Yes, exactly. Because, we have so many moral panics in our lives.
I share your outrage at being held personally responsible for the Goan Inquisition.
Where did you read that? I mean, that's obviously part of it. Yes. I mean, part of if you're a Catholic Goan, we're now subjected to bear the burden of the Inquisition on our back, on our humps, as it were. All of these moral panics, they inevitably become so insignificant, because, like I said, life takes over. Change is inevitable.
Sure, but isn't it in human nature to resist change?
Absolutely. Oh my God, absolutely. And that's what you can trace every conflict in human societies down to, that is change and the resistance to it.
Selma, you paint on a rather large canvas. Are you an academician and historian?
No, I have a master's degree in business administration.
An MBA, the great Indian middle class dream?
Of course, like I said, I followed that to the T. Counting and then...
Good girl lurks within.
There's always a good girl inside the bad girl, or rather the other way around in my case. Yes.
Also lurking inside that academic persona was a novelist.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And that led to your novel, Sisterhood of Swans. Non-fiction to fiction. Was the transition easy?
I really do believe that if you're going to write a novel or if you're going to write fiction, you have to be able to write stellar nonfiction.
Are you an academic?
No.
Well, as you said, it's like pornography, isn't it? You know it when you see it. So, Sisterhood of Swans is your first debut novel, is it?
Yes.
And you had within you a story to tell. So, introduce me to the novelist within.
I'd written numerous short stories, which had done quite well in literary contests. And I was selling that collection.
Fiction?
Yes, fiction.
Okay.
And I was selling that collection. And that collection landed up on Renuka Chatterjee's desk. She's the VP of Speaking Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
And she liked it. And she said to me, Selma, we want to buy this collection, but we want to introduce you as a novelist. So go ahead and write a novel for us. And something that rarely happens to writers, they bought the rights to the novel before I'd written it.
Okay.
And I remember saying to Renuka, but what if it's an absolute rubbish? And she said, no, we like your writing. Go ahead and write it. And I did, and she loved it. And obviously that became Sisterhood of Swans.
Who are the swans and why are they in a sisterhood?
I've been talking so much to you. You're so easy to talk to. I feel like if I go into this, into how or what the novel is all about, I may end up sort of revealing myself unnecessarily to you. But
only as much as you want to.
That's just it.
Let's meet in the middle. Why don't you give me the dust jacket version?
Well, the Sisterhood of Swans is really about this young woman in her 20s who goes about making disastrous relationship choices. And really what I wanted to explore or write about is how sexuality is so much a part of our lives in our early years, and how within that sexuality, women do suffer a loss of agency. And so many of the decisions they come to make about their lives are powerless decisions. Let me put it this way. They don't have as much power as is assumed.
You write that as swans, you look to mate permanently but never get there.
Yeah, that's the line. We belong to the Sisterhood of Swans, hoping to mate for life. And the second line to that, the follow-up to that is, but our species is doomed to disappointment.
And I ask without judgment, is it a facet of women's writing that it is tinged with sadness so often?
Is it? Yes, I suppose so. But I think generally, isn't it? Because you tend to explore issues that are unresolved.
I agree, and men do tend to run away from issues. Selma Carvalho, thank you for being my guest today. You were such fun.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll be right back with What's That Word? And I'm back with What's That Word, a fun segment where we look at phrases and words that we commonly use or hear but never stop to think about. And to help me with it is my co-host, the Wicked Witch of Words. She will reduce a proverb to a mere verb. As always, I'll let her introduce herself. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pranati, but you can call me P. That's P with an A, not another E.
P with an A? How does anyone P with an A? And anyway, what's an A?
A very high-minded letter of the alphabet.
Oh, you mean alpha, like P with an alpha. Oh, okay, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, now I'm tempted to change my name.
And crush the hearts of your new fans? Don't you dare.
Well, I'm glad I bring you such fun with what's that word you always use? Yeah, peristalsis.
Oh, yeah, peristalsis. Fun with peristalsis. Bringing joy to urologists all over the city. Okay, puerile humor, check. All right, P with an A, what's the word?
Listening to your interview with Selma Carvalho, by the way, you seem to think highly of her.
I do.
I can't wait to read her pieces, therefore.
And you wouldn't be wasting a minute. She be good reading.
Yeah. The interview is also filled with many opportunities for what's that word. Some of them beg plain meaning.
Like
centripetal.
Centripetal or centripetal is the opposite of centrifugal. So centrifugal is when something from the inside starts to swirl outwards, and centripetal is the opposite, stuff from the outside moving in towards the center.
Right, so this is towards the center.
Yeah, from a diaspora standpoint, it makes all kinds of sense when you think about people and their feelings and their moods about the home country. For us local yokels, we don't centrifuge, we don't centripet. Real words.
Yeah, cool. And she also used the word interiority. I like that word.
Selma's mummy's pal did say that she has a big vocabulary. Just kidding, Selma.
But in your monologue, you used the phrase contemplating your navel.
Yes, I did.
That's the one. Let's dive into that one.
Okay, bring me up to scratch with what you know.
I know the phrase is an idiom. It means to sort of be engrossed reflectively.
Right.
Like staring at your own navel and being lost in thought.
Exactly. Pretty good.
Yeah, but I've not heard it used commonly.
I have, from time to time.
In India? Not so much here, I'd expect.
Well, you're going to be surprised. So anyway, since you summed up the meaning pretty well, I'll dive right into all the other stuff and Greek up the etymology.
Yay for navels.
Okay, let me start with the Greek.
Of course. We already know so many dreaded letters of their alphabet.
A little black humor there, but it's true. The Greek alphabet has ruined our lives for the last 2.5 years. Well, anyway, okay. I'm going to get directly to the Greek word, and the Greek word is omphaloskepsis. You know that word? Have you done any omphaloskepsis lately?
No. Who's he?
Who's he?
Is he hot?
He's not. Stavros omphaloskepsis. You can call me Omphi.
Oh, no.
Smart move. All right, let's break that word up into two parts, omphalos and skepsis. Now, omphalos literally means navel. Maybe that's your thing, belly buttons. And the second part of the word is skepsis, which means examination. And you might know its derivatives, skepticism, skeptical, skeptic.
Ah, yeah.
So when you are skeptical about something, it just simply means that you wish to examine it a little further to allay your suspicions, for instance.
Right.
And as to omphalo, omphaloid literally means to resemble an umbilical.
Ah.
So you take skepsis and then you add omphalos to it. So omphaloskepsis, and you mush the two together so they become a quick word, omphaloskepsis. One of its first uses was credited to a newspaper in India.
Oh, tell me more.
The Times of India's Bombay edition in 1928 wrote, "Football, tennis, and even cinemas by barbarians from the West has tended to lower the popularity of omphaloskepsis by encouraging extrovert types of recreation." Clearly, those cats didn't like entertainment. They wanted us to sit at home and examine our navels with the profundity of Buddha.
Right.
But in recent times, the phrase has acquired something of a negative connotation, which generally means a navel gazer is a do-nothing. The act of excessively focusing on one's own personal problems or existence or concerns to the general exclusion of anything else. Contemplating one's navel means you're complacent and just considering only yourself and your interests and forgetting about the rest of the world. So there it is. And if you wish to admonish someone of being lazy, you might say to that person, hey, don't be a navel gazer. Go get the job done.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is the first time we've actually had an Indian newspaper reference. Usually our words come from American newspapers.
Well, it's as Indian as you want the Times of India to have been in 1928.
Yeah, there's that.
But wait, there's an even more recent reference.
Really? On contemplating one's neighbor?
Yes, absolutely. It's even better than that. There was a book launched just a few years ago. It's titled How I Got My Belly Button. It's an informative and age-appropriate sex ed book for pre-teens, Indian pre-teens. How I Got My Belly Button.
Okay.
It's a story of two 9-year-olds who ask their parents questions like, where did we come from?
Yeah, go ask mommy.
No, he had the book, How I Got My Belly Button.
Yeah, but that's cool. How progressive we can be.
Yes, true. How progressive we can be indeed. And how regressive I wish my belly could be.
Can't we all?
Okay, and now is the time for all good men to repair to their caves and get in touch with their inner Buddha and examine their belly button fluff. Okay, that's cool. Okay, P with an A. That was not transcendental meditation, but fun. Let's do it again next week. Okay, people, thank you so much for sending in your suggestions for what's that word. But, what we want is a word of common use that we'd like to examine, not necessarily a dictionary definition of a word. So anyway, keep sending them in and let's keep hammering away at it. If you have a word or a phrase that confounds you or interests you or keeps you up at night, get in touch with us. You'll find out how in the podcast description. And that's our show for the week. Thank you so much for being here and see you again next Wednesday.